Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It is Christmas week, and I am your host, Joe Slepsky. I'm excited for Christmas. I hope everyone out there is enjoying their holiday, whether it's Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is you celebrate. I hope everyone's enjoying themselves. This is a great time of year to celebrate family, reflect on the year that was, hope for a better year to come. And most of all, for you G.I. Joe fans, it is the time of year to get fat with toys. Man, I hope everyone gets a wonderful G.I. Joe related gift under the tree. Share them with us. Go on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Shoot us a note. I don't know, tag it with Joe on Joe, but share it. Tag me in it at Joe on Joe Pod, and show me what you get for Christmas. Pretend we're 10 again, right? What did I get this week? The Fire Team came in the mail, and then today from Walmart was the Night Force Wolf Spider showed up. That looks very pretty. I'm very excited for you new listeners. This is the podcast where we've gone over every episode of the G.I. Joe cartoon, the G.I. Joe comic books. We're working our way through all of them. Slowly but surely, we will get there. And we have been focusing on the Action Force annuals for these last couple months, and we're going to do so again today. We're dealing with Action Force Annual 1989. Now, and they've now dropped the battle action part of it, and it is just straight up Action Force. For those of you unfamiliar, this is the UK. A lot of it is reprint, but a lot of it was new material. But in this case, it's all reprint in a fresh prose. But this is the UK version of the G.I. Joe team, and it's a lot of the same familiar characters, but they've changed some of the names. Cobra's a little different. We've gone over that in the last few weeks. So check our feed. Get caught up on some of the Action Force discussion that we've been having for these last few months. I think you'll enjoy it. I've certainly been enjoying my time going through it. Now, so what we covered Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's our social media handle. Please, if you're out there, give us a rate and review on whatever podcast catcher you're on. That would be amazing. And if you're so inclined, visit the Patreon page and help support the show that way. Go to patreon.com/Joe on Joe Pod, and you can become a show supporter and get full access to everything we've ever done. Some extra stuff when I can. I do it when I can. I think I want to start doing behind the scenes videos of me recording this stuff. I did that once as a stream on Instagram. It was kind of fun. But I think I want to set it up so it's easier for me to do on the regular. My quote unquote podcast studio is a hot mess of eBay auctions and work stuff, and it is not ready for prime time. So that's why I don't do a lot of video stuff. But who knows what the new year will bring, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate you all, and I really appreciate our sponsors, the Movies in a Meal podcast. In the beginning of time, the smallest organism gained sentience and thought to itself, I really need a good meal. Then, a bunch of other stuff happened, and finally the Lumiere brothers started showing movies in France. This was all the inspiration that fellow broadcasters Brad, Keith, and Ben needed to combine these two primal needs into the Movies in a Meal podcast. The Movies in a Meal is one of the most casual and relaxing film talk podcasts you could ever listen to. These three friends enjoy a good meal together while talking all about the movies. And not just reviews. They do favorite lists, comparison discussions, genre talks, anything and everything that you can think of. They've even broken their solemn promise inherent in the name and branched out into TV talk. So I love the variety of films they bring to the table. They cover new releases, classics, cult films, often in one episode. It's really a delight to listen to, and it has something for every movie fan out there to enjoy. So if you're looking to grow your podcast library, if you eat meals, and if you've ever seen a movie, then you should give Ben, Keith, and Brad a listen and subscribe to the Movies in a Meal podcast. They've been a great sponsor to this show. I love the Movies in a Meal podcast, and I'd like all of you to love them too. All right, as discussed, today is Action Force Annual from 1989. Now, the annuals, they're hardcover, and they're bound with the same image on both sides. That's been the tradition on these. And in this case, it is a Herb Trimpe image of the Havoc, Cross Country's Havoc, although Cross Country's is, from what I can see, is nowhere to be found. But it's a great image of Snake Eyes on the top, Duke on the top, Leatherneck in that most dangerous driver's seat that you're just going to get shot in the face, but no one cares. Dusty and Leatherneck, no, sorry, Dusty and Beachhead are in the cockpit. Now, I never understood. I think up top just mans the guns then, and are the drivers Dusty and Beachhead in this case? I never really understood who drove what, but Cross Country Road said up top, so I was assuming that he was driving it from up top, but then you look down below, and that seems a little safer. Anyway, and then in the back, you got Footloose flying in the hovercraft that would pop out the back of the Havoc. So it's a great toy. You open up inside. There's a really nice 2-page splash. Also, again, Herb Shrimpy with Airtight, Lady J, Sci-Fi, Frostbite, General Hawk. Did I say Duke earlier? I meant General Hawk on the cover. I'm sorry if I said Duke. That's an old slip of the tongue. I haven't done that in a long time. But yeah, that's General Hawk on the cover, of course, and Roadblock. And it's a nice little 2-page action spread. It's very cool. We go inside to the Mission Control, which is their table of contents. Now, this is a neat thing. They leave room for you to paste your own photo and your name and your code name and rank, so you make yourself like your own file card. I'm assuming a lot of these have had them cut out. And it gives you the table of contents. Now, this book specifically has 2 reprints in it from G.I. Joe Special Missions number 7 and Special Missions number 2. It's the old Switcheroo from 7 and Words of Honor from issue number 2. So we're not going to go over those in excruciating detail, as we like to say. But what we are going to do today is we are going to read part 1 of the prose story. We did this a few episodes back for the previous year annual. So this one is called Havoc, Havoc, which is the Havoc the vehicle, in the Outback. And it's written by Dan Abnett, art by Jerry Paris, and color by Ewan Peters. Art, for as far as we talk about art, there are some panels in here that kind of go with the story. It's not full comic book. Like it's not comic book panels, but they're highlight panels, like you see in like storybooks. So they give you a feel for, like there's an exploding Rattler, and then there's a close-up of, or actually a mid-shot of the Baroness with some Crimson Guards. Like, they were nice. They're pretty fun. So Jerry Paris and Ewan Peters are doing that. But Dan Abnett, that's the name to watch, ladies and gentlemen. He is a really fabulous writer. If you're not familiar with his work, from the UK, I believe. And actually, I know that because I met someone once who was from his hometown. I expressed my affection for his work, and they ended up getting a signed copy of a comic book for me, which was really nice. So, Dan, if you're listening, you're a very nice guy. Part of the longtime team of Abnett and Lanning. I know that they've recently split up for a while. But they're responsible for some really, really, really great modern comic books. The biggest impact that they had, I think, was the Annihilation stuff over at Marvel. They spearheaded that miniseries, and then Annihilation 2 was the second one. What do they call it? Annihilation Requiem, or the first one and the second one. But from that, stemmed the Guardians of the Galaxy, which, if you don't have that Annihilation miniseries and storyline, you don't get the movie version of the Guardians of the Galaxy that we all absolutely adore, and I really do. And I genuinely mean that. That doesn't happen without Dan Abnett putting together that Annihilation story, and out of that growing the version of the Guardians of the Galaxy. So he's a major, major influence on pop culture today, and that is an absolute fact. They also did one of my personal favorites. I think this was the book that those very nice people ended up getting me an autograph on, was Resurrection Man from DC. Such a good series. They revived it with the New 52, which was such a surprise. But the first one from the regular series, and New 52 was good too, but the first time they did it, which was like late 90s, was excellent. It was just an excellent miniseries. And it's, a guy that dies and keeps getting a new superpower every time it comes back. You've seen that idea before, someone with rotating superpowers, but they really did it smart. They did it very well. Resurrection Man is so overlooked. I really feel like the only they've probably collected it. I know the more recent collections, obviously, were the New 52 stuff going back a few years, but it's that first run that I really urge everyone to check out. Jackson Butch Geiss did the artwork on it, and it was gorgeous. They have worked consistently in comic books and really have elevated a lot of iffy books. I believe they were responsible for Force Works, which is in the era of extreme stuff. That was the extreme version of the Avengers that spun out of West Coast Avengers. And on the surface, you'd laugh at it because it's silly, but it actually was pretty good. It was pretty well done book. There's a lot of books like that you look at and you go, oh, that's just an idea of the time. But then you look at the creative team, you go, well, maybe this is worth looking into, and that's one of them. So they've done a ton of stuff. I think they did the first Scarlet Witch miniseries. Anyway, because she was in the series at the time. Done an absolute ton of stuff. So to see his work here on G.I. Joe is awesome. I'm very excited for it. The first page here is a really neat drawing, though. This is shifting gears here. We're talking about Jerry Paris. It's the Havoc, and it is a full-on toyetic, completely representative of the toy Havoc falling out of the sky, and it looks like Dusty is driving it. Let me look a little closer. Yeah, it appears to be Dusty with his eyes wide open, a gasp and a gape, as it's falling out the back of a C-130 with some parachutes that are just now deploying, so it must be plummeting pretty quickly. It's great. It's a really nice rendering of the Havoc, though. Very detailed. As all these action forces, going back to the 85 ones, 86, they've always been very toy accurate. So they were really working directly from these toys, and the artists really did an excellent job of capturing them. So we've got a prose book, ladies and germs. So what does that mean? That means I'm going to sit here and read things for you. And who knows? I might try to do some fun accents. I might not. It's going to be really whatever strikes me in the moment. If it's terrible, don't hold it against me. And if I don't do it, don't be surprised when I do. Let's leave it at that. Any hoots. The Havoc, according to the training document, weighs 32 metric tons. That's funny they spell it tons, T-O-N-N-E-S. God bless you, British. Is powered by twins Rolls-Royce engines and is capable of over 70 kilometers an hour on flat ground. In off-road conditions, the engine power combines with a unique hydraulic joint in its midsection, allowing it to reach speeds of up to 40 kilometers an hour over even the most arduous terrain. That seems straight out of the file card. Heavily armored and crewed by an optimum of 3 personnel, it mounts 2 racks of heat-seeking missiles, twin grenade launchers, 2 rear-mounted machine guns, and a dorsally positioned open turret packing twin 50 caliber cannons, firing armor-piercing rounds at a rate of 600 shells per minute. It carries a small aerial reconnaissance craft in its rear section and is equipped with the very best state-of-the-art detection, monitoring, and fire control electronics. This allows it to bring its fearsome armaments to bear with devastating accuracy. The name Havoc is an acronym for Heavy Articulated Vehicle Ordnance Carrier. The consortium of civil and military engineering firms responsible for its design insists that the name was arrived at coincidentally after its specifications were decided upon. Those who have trained on it maintain that the name Havoc is far too apt to be an accident. Air Force operative Dusty, with a 2-week crash course in familiarization behind him, agreed wholeheartedly with the latter viewpoint. Forget heavy articulated vehicle ordnance carrier. Forget the full stops in capital letters. Havoc by name, Havoc by nature. In the semi-darkness of the Bay Area of a Hercules transport aircraft, Dusty ran a respectful hand along the Havoc's steel-armored flank. The vehicle loomed out of the gloom, a sleeping monster waiting to burst into deadly life. Soon, thought Dusty, soon. Dusty, 1 minute, a voice rasped over the intercom. Already here, Dusty replied, then climbed up into the Havoc's cockpit, closed the armored canopy, and switched on the blinking array of readouts that surrounded the twin driving positions. Well, that answers that question. You drive from the canopy. Green lights all around, he noted with satisfaction. Green on weaponry, green on power, green on detection systems. Like new, fully functional, perfect, and ready for anything. Dusty strapped himself into the restraint harness, ran a final check, then spoke into the radio mic. Havoc to Mother Goose, all tucked in and ready for bed, whenever you're ready. Mother Goose to Havoc, bedtime approaching, hold on tight. The voice replied. Good luck, Dusty, we'll see you on the other side. Dusty closed his eyes and braced himself. Thanks, Wild Bill. Well, that was Wild Bill the whole time. Hold on. Well, good luck, Dusty. See you on the other side. Thanks, Wild Bill, he said. Let's go, okay? Sleep tight, chuckled Wild Bill. Mother Goose to Havoc. Time for bed. Yee-haw! The Havoc weighs 32 metric tons. As Wild Bill touched the cargo release button, those two 32 tons shot backwards, hurtling away from the Hercules cargo ramp with a jolt that shook its driver like an earthquake. Then Dusty and the 32 tons of machine were falling through space, 15,000 feet off the ground. 2 miles away, and some 14,000 feet lower, Hawk leaned out of the Tomahawk's hatchway and squinted out into the bright, sunlit world behind. The desert beneath him was almost blindingly white, and the roar of the chopper's twin rotors deafened him. He swung back inside to where his 4 other team members sat, waiting silently. The voice of Lift Ticket, the chopper pilot, came over his headset. LZ 1 minute away. Get ready for dust-off. Understood, Hawk replied. On your feet, boys. 1 minute to the landing zone. The others clambered up and approached the door in single file. Mother Goose reporting, Havoc away and fallen. That's my Wild Bill. Lift Ticket continued. No, wait, no, that was Lift Ticket. And Wild Bill wishes you all good luck. I'm getting confused. Hawk relayed the message to the other 4, adding, dust off smartly and form a security perimeter the moment you're down. We know the drill, Hawk, growled Leatherneck. The Tomahawk swung in lower, beating up clouds of dust with its rotors. Then the chopper cut its forward motion and swinging it 0 feet over the appointed landing zone. Go! Hawk yelled over the noise, and checked each of them as they leapt past him out into the desert sands. Beachhead, the assault specialist first, carrying a suppressed M16 in his hands. Then Leatherneck, the Marine, his SA-80 already raised to firing position. Behind him came Footloose, his M16 fitted with a grenade launcher beneath the muzzle. And last came Snake Eyes, the black-suited ninja commando, armed with his trademark, the Uzi submachine gun. Hawk followed them out. In the downwash of the chopper blades, the group of 5 formed a tight defensive circle on top of a rocky rise, gun sighted in a 360-degree field of fire. Down and safe, Hawk barked into his mic. See you soon, Lift Ticket. Give me a call any time, replied their pilot. Hawk waved in acknowledgement, and the chopper rose in a roar of throttle, dipped its nose, and thundered off into the sky. Position secure, Hawk, reported Beachhead. Okay, said Hawk, already feeling uncomfortably hot in the blazing sun. Let's move out and find Dusty and the Havoc. Hey, said Leatherneck. What do you think this is? He held up the bleached skull of some animal that had been on the ground where he had crouched. Sheep? Goat? Koala? Marine? Suggested Footloose. Leatherneck gave him a disgusted scowl. Who knows, he said. Then turning, he hurled the skull off into the distance. Welcome to Australia, he said as it dropped from sight. A further 90 miles away, another craft was coming to Earth. After touching down, the large transport plane taxied across the dry dirt of a makeshift landing strip. It then coasted into the shadowed depths of a natural hangar formed by a cavern in the side of a flat-topped mountain of red rock. Despite the surrounding wilderness, the interior of the cave was bright with lighting arrays, refueling posts, and cargo handling equipment. Nearby in this hidden high-tech wonderland sat several black-painted attack planes. Like the newly arrived aircraft, the attack planes all bore the same sinister red emblem on their hulls. It was the stylized image of a poisonous snake, a cobra. As the transport plane's engine shut down and its loading ramp lowered, groups of ground crews ran up alongside, and a squad of blue-uniformed troops marched up to form the attentive ranks of a guard of honor. It's honor spelled with O-U-R. Properly. After a moment, the plane's passenger descended the ramp into the bay area, casually acknowledging the crisp salute of the waiting soldiers. She walked elegantly and proudly, a tall, pale woman with long dark hair, wearing the black uniform of an officer. The landing lights reflected from the large lensed glasses that she wore. I am not going to do a Baroness. My compliments, Baroness. Oh, no, wait. Because that's not even the Baroness. My compliments, Baroness. Welcome to this installation. I trust your flight was satisfactory. She turned at the words and haughtily regarded the speaker, a short, powerful-looking man in a red uniform. There are more important things. That's terrible. There are more important things than comfort, Commander Brone, she replied coolly. I wish to be updated as to the status of the Tin Man immediately. I'm sorry, I can't do a Baroness, and it's not going to happen. Of course, Baroness. But this landing bay area is really not the place. Allow me to escort you to more pleasant surroundings. A short walk led them through the corridors of the installation to a richly furnished paneled apartment. "Would you care for a glass of wine to refresh you?" asked the commander, proffering a dusty bottle so that she might read the label. "It is, I can assure you, of the finest vintage." "I have not come here to drink, Brone," the Baroness snapped. "The activities of the installation here at Fire Hill, have greatly concerned Cobra Commander for some time. So much so that I accepted your invitation to attend the launch of the Tin Man in order that I could personally oversee any eccentricities on your part." Commander Brone looked hurt for a moment before his disconcerting smile returned. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean. Project Tin Man is operating at maximum efficiency. We launch in 30 hours. Your presence here is entirely complimentary. I'm going to real quick guess that Commander Brone's going to die, because otherwise why wouldn't you use someone cool like Major Blood? I don't know who this Brone guy is." "I hardly need to remind you, Brone, that this project is the single most important activity currently occupying Cobra. The launch of an orbital weapons platform will give us a strategic initiative to rival that of any nation. Nothing must go wrong." "My dear, what could possibly get in our way?" Brone laughed in mock surprise. The Baroness's gaze was withering and stern. "My dear" was not a form of address that she approved of. "Brone, I took the liberty of studying your security reports during my flight here. The report dated the 23rd of last month informs me that your sentries detained a red-haired vagrant around the base. After exhaustive questioning, they concluded that he was harmless and released him. Such men do not normally appear in the middle of the Australian outback, thousands of miles from anywhere. This alarms me." "He was, I assure you, no risk, Baroness," replied Brone. "Even if he was, we are, as you yourself point out, thousands of miles from anything, including the nearest water. We threw him back into the desert with nothing to survive on. Even if he were the commander of Action Force himself, his bones will now be bleaching in the sun." "Well, perhaps," said the Baroness. "In any case, I have brought 2 colleagues along with me to ensure maximum security covering during the last stages of this enterprise." For the first time, Brone's expression was one of genuine alarm, as he noticed the 2 figures now quietly leaning in the doorway. 2 men, tall, roughly dressed in ragged jackets and jeans, their hair long, their smiles evil. One bespectacled individual smoking a cigar nodded politely to Brone. "Buzzer and Monkey Wrench are both dreadnoughts," said the Baroness quietly. "I trust you will see to their needs during the course of their stay." Brone nodded uncomfortably. Even in the ruthless atmosphere of Cobra, the dreadnoughts could instill fear into the most of their colleagues. Still smiling, Buzzer stepped forward. "So hospitable," commanded Brone. "This is indeed a most excellent vintage." Lifting a bottle of wine, he broke the neck off against the side of a coffee table and filled 2 glasses. "Your very good health," he said. "Oh, feel. Oh, feel? Oh, feel. What's oh, feel mean?" "Oh, feel," thought Hawk, after a little consideration, "like a rasher of bacon slowly sizzling in the pan." Wiping his brow for the umpteenth time, he looked around again. As frying pans went, this sure was a large one. What made matters worse was that Hawk was not entirely certain why he was sizzling in it. The message in a complex Action Force code had come to the attention of his superior some 6 days before. It consisted of the operator's serial number, a grid reference, and the following words: "Cobra Party here on June 18th. Bring a bottle." The map reference was for the center of the Australian Outback. The serial number was that of an Action Force field operator, and, quote, "bring a bottle" was code for "request strike team support." So here Hawk was, complete with a Havoc and a 6-man fire team. They still didn't really know why. Would they be enough, Hawk wondered, or too much? How long would they have to wait here in the minimal shade cast by the Havoc before they found out? Was their man in the field still alive? Were they waiting for nobody? What was the Cobra Party? Would they all be turned into sizzled bacon before it started? Fighting back the thought that the party was a barbecue, with them as the main course, Hawk checked the shimmering distance again for a sign of life. "To the west," Leatherneck called suddenly from the Havoc. "One man coming this way." The team scrambled into defensive positions. Dusty sat ready in the cab. Leatherneck climbed into the open turret position and pointed the cannons westward. In the distance, Hawk could make out the figure of a man walking slowly towards them, his shape distorted by the heat. "Cover me and stand by," said Hawk, relieved by the fact that something was actually happening. "I'll go say hello." He stepped away and advanced on the approaching figure, ready to pull out his pistol and dive for cover at a moment's notice. The newcomer strode up purposely and stopped a few yards away from Hawk. The stranger was dirty and disheveled, dressed in worn fatigues with a hat pulled low over his eyes. On his back was slung a light equipment pack and a covered M16. His face was largely beard, and he was red-haired and looked something like a picture book pirate. He stared back for a moment, then he said, "You're Hawk, Brigadier General RA 212-754036. Why are you giving out social security numbers, man? That's wild." Hawk nodded. "Selkirk, Stewart R. 098549270, codenamed Outback, reporting for duty. I gather you got my message." "Got here as soon as we could," replied Hawk. They turned and walked towards the Havoc. "What's going on, Outback?" "We've been out here a couple of months on detached duty," said the newcomer, his words a little halting, as if he had not spoken in years. "Let me try that again, then. I've been following up reports on unidentified airborne activity in the central desert. I found a Cobra base, a big one, so I called you up." Hawk's team gathered round them. Footloose offered a canteen to Outback, who accepted it gratefully and drank thirstily. "I've been on minimum rations for a week," he commented. Before returning the canteen, he topped off his own carefully. "Well, how did you find this Cobra base?" asked Hawk. "Luck. Got myself picked up by a Cobra patrol. They questioned me, decided I was a harmless drifter, and left me in the desert expecting me to die. But I walked back to my supply dump." "Well, how far was that?" Footloose asked casually. About 90 miles. Ignoring the impressed pause, Outback pulled a map out and opened it. "The Cobra base is here," he pointed, "inside this block mountain known as Firehill. It's about 110 miles cross-country from here." "What's it for?" asked Hawk. "I don't know precisely, but it's big and very important. Whatever they're doing there is nearly finished, judging from recent activity. It's a major project, whatever it is. I was hoping they'd send some considerable backup." Hawk shrugged. "It's difficult to get anything into the middle of the Outback, and you weren't too specific. I can radio for more." "No time," said Outback simply. "We just have to move immediately. We'll have to see what we can do on our own." Facts, thought Hawk. Just what I was after. Shame they simply confirm what a big frying pan this is, and what small rashers of bacon we are. Simultaneously, 20 groups of vicious demons swarmed down from 20 identical mountain crags and 20 identical storms, Barone smiled, and used the remote control to switch the banks of television screens back to their complex technical readouts. "The Wizard of Oz," he explained. "A marvelous film, my favorite." The Baroness remained unimpressed. "Your flippancy disturbs me, Brown." "Really, my dear, The Wizard of Oz is symbolic of the entire venture. A grand dream, the work of a wizard, me. You see, Oz, Australia. That's why I codenamed this installation Oz. This control room, the Emerald City. This project, Tin Man. I find an automation in need of oiling a weak analogy for a satellite weapon," said the Baroness. "Think rather," said Brown, "of a machine without a heart, ruthless, indestructible. Once placed in its polar orbit, Tin Man's laser weapon will be capable of hitting any point on the globe. Its laser shielding means it's invulnerable, Baroness. We stand on the threshold of a new age of power. For us, for Cobra. Power like a wizard's magic. Total, consuming, utter." A subtle cough brought Brown back to earth. At his side stood the chief of security, a haggard, lean Viper soldier who had already been introduced to the Baroness as, quote, Scarecrow, a name that for her further confirmed Brown's lunacy. "Surveillance reports an unauthorized vehicle approaching our eastern perimeter, sir," said Scarecrow. "That's probably Dorothy and Toto," Brown remarked. The Baroness dryly. "I thought you said you had everything in hand." "And so I have," said Brown, without a hint of concern. "Scarecrow, scramble Rattlers 1 and 2 for an airstrike, and send out a division of Stingers and troops to pick up any pieces." Brown's accent, by the way, is forming as we go. He smiled at the Baroness. "You see, my wicked witch of the West, I am Oz, the great and terrible, and Dorothy will find that I am in no mood to solve her problems." Side note, I played The Wizard of Oz in a 6th grade play. I was going to say 5th, but it was a 6th grade play. It was The Wizard of Oz. Anywhoots. From the ridge, Beachhead, Outback, and Snake Eyes watched the two attack aircraft scream up into the evening sky from the cavern in the squat mountain and bank east. "A welcoming party for Hawk and the others," whispered Beachhead. "Hope they can look after themselves." Outback passed no comment on the winged death that soared off towards the rest of their team. "The Havoc will act as a diversion as planned," he said. "Meantime, we'll get in there and find out what's going on and do something about it." "Well, you don't care, do you?" hissed Beachhead crossly. "You're just a loner. Those Rattlers will probably be more than match for the Havoc." "We got no time to care. We have a job to do," Outback replied. By his side, Snake Eyes gestured down to the fire hill, gradually dimming in the dusk. "And I agree with your mute friend. It's time to move. By the way, this is great because this sets up that same kind of characterization that they gave Outback when he was ordered to leave Barovia in the mainstream comic book, that everyone kind of doesn't like him. If we ever get out of this, Beachhead began, but the other two were already moving down on the cover of the rocks towards the daunting installation. Beachhead lifted his gun and slid after them. I swear I'll shoot you myself. When Hawk screamed out the warning, the Havoc crew had barely 20 seconds to respond. The vehicle was churning down a steep gully between two canyon walls about 60 feet high. Dusty, controlling its advance, with Hawk alongside of the cockpit, scanning the Havoc's detector screens for signs of attack. Leatherneck sat above them, manning the cannon turret, and Footloose clung to the missile racks. Hawk saw the blip on the radar, a low-level aircraft moving in to strike from the west, hidden till the very last moment by the canyon walls. It would be on them in 20 seconds and counting. Incoming, he yelled into the mic. West-southwest. That was really all he had time for. Leatherneck responded at once by pointing the turret in that direction, ready to fire. Footloose turned on his fire control computer and switched off the safety. The roar of the jets hit them like a storm. The big dark blur of the Rattler swooped over the canyon top and banked towards them. As it did so, it released a 4-missile bracket shot that had enough power to take out the Havoc a dozen times over. In answer, the Havoc spat darts of fire from its hind section as Footloose coolly noted the 4 rockets lancing down on him, fired off a rack full of chaff dispensers. There was a dreadful blast and subsequent shock as the rapid, blooming cloud of chaff puffed out in the missile's path, fooled their sensors, and exploded them. As the Rattler overshot, Footloose launched a single heat-seeking missile in its direction. The Rattler banked wildly to avoid it, its left wing tip catching the lip of the far canyon wall just as the heat seeker caught its tail. The resulting fireball scattered debris over a wide area and brought down the good-sized chunk of the cliff face. 15 love, remarked Footloose with obvious satisfaction. Stay sharp, warned Hawk. It's more likely incoming, due west. Then a second Rattler was on them, learning from its partner's mistake and opting for a prolonged burst of fire from its nose cannon rather than a missile shot. The strafing shells blasted up rock and sand, then caught the Havoc's tail armor in a shower of white-hot sparks. Leatherneck didn't wait for the line of fire to reach him or Footloose. The turret cannon thundered to life, the twin barrels pumping out streams of 50 caliber armor-piercing rounds at the oncoming plane. The Rattler could only take so much punishment. As it was overhead, Leatherneck's cannon fire caught something vital, the fuel tank perhaps, or its unfired missiles. The explosion that followed showered the Havoc with thousands of fragments of superheated metal, and the sounds of explosion was all but deafening in the confines of the gully. Dusty, get us out of this canyon, Hawk ordered. We've got stingers coming our way now. Nice shooting, Leatherneck. 30 love, I reckon, Footloose. 30-15, I'm afraid, Footloose said quietly from above. Some of the shrapnel hit Leatherneck. He's been hurt real bad. Well, we'll patch him up and I'll take over the turret, said Hawk. Help me get him into the cockpit. Hawk tried to hide his concern with efficiency, but he had a sick feeling of impending disaster. 4 of them had just handled the first attack, and now there were only 3. Continued on page 56, ladies and gentlemen. That means continued next week. So let's end this year with, right before Christmas, with part 1 of that story. We'll end the year out with part 2. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And have a Merry Christmas. And now you, Joe. Enjoying is half the battle.